Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. This is finally our top 5 favorite board games of all time. Number 5 down to the grand number 1. My name is Cory.
I'm Nick.
I'm John.
I'm Jurch.
I'm Ryan.
And without further ado, let's get started.
Alright, my number 5 is Gears of War by Fantasy Flight Games, and I'm going to start by saying, no, I'm not actually a big Gears of War fan, but this was probably one of the first dungeon crawler type of board games that I played, and I remember thinking, wow, it literally is like a video game that's a board game, and it just really got my attention right away. And to this day, I think it still stands the test of time. I don't know of a better video game, board game adapted from a video game. There's obviously good ones out there, but Gears of War to me is still the granddaddy of video game board games. And they included like weapon drops. You kill an enemy, you can pick up one of their weapons that's probably better than yours, just like in most video games. I love the cover rules of how you can, gain cover from being behind barricades. The weapon and the ammo system mechanics in the game, I think, are really intuitive and simple. And that's also why I really like the game, is it's really not that complicated, and it just plays pretty quickly. The scenarios always play a little differently because of how the map tiles come out. So there's some replayability, even though you only get like 10 scenarios in the base game. And unfortunately, Fantasy Flight stopped supporting the game after the very first base game came out, although they could have probably pumped out like 10 expansions for it. So it is a game that's hard to find today, unfortunately, but nonetheless, I'm keeping it at number 5.
And I
for my
am
list.
a big Gears of War fan,
Okay.
and I still have never played this game, so it'd be fun
We
to
gotta
try
change
sometime.
that, yeah.
Alright, my number 5 is Clank in Space. And Clank at its core, all the versions are a deck building game with like a dungeon delving board that you're going through to gather a treasure, escape, and that's how you score endgame points. And the thing that really stands out with Clank in Space is that you're actually forced, instead of just grabbing like the easiest treasure to get and getting out, you actually have to first collect this like door code to get deeper into the space station. Then you can grab a treasure and escape. And I think that balanced the game a little more. And that really makes it more interesting for me, because I do like the push your luck mechanic of this. Like, I always want to go for that 30-point treasure as deep in there as I can and try to get out and be the big winner. But obviously that never works because I die like half the time. But another mechanic I really like too is that the cards that you're deck building with now also have factions associated with some of the cards. And the way they combo with other cards you can buy, I think, is really cool and adds like another level of strategy to the game overall as you're building your deck. So
Yeah. You can really tell that they improved upon their original design.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
That was actually my number 6 game, was Clank.
All right, and my number 5, unfortunately, this might be kind of my top Stefan Feld games. I just really love that designer, and I love my Euro games. But this game is TRAJAN. In TRAJAN, it is basically a point salad game where you have just a million different things that you're going after points in different various ways. But the thing I love most about TRAJAN is that you have a rondel, kind of a rondel Mancala system as your main action selection. And it's really fun. Each spot starts with 2 different colored columns on it, and you're moving those columns around, dropping one off at a time as you go. And wherever you land, on whatever bucket or cup you land in, is what action you get to take. And depending on what color you landed there with, you also get bonuses associated with that as well. So a very simple core mechanism to the game and how you play, but just a whole lot of going on, a whole lot of strategy and different options you can do with that. So that's my number 5, TRAJAN.
Yeah, it's colorful, a lot of actions that you can be doing, a lot of ways you can win, and definitely a lot of ways you can lose.
That's true.
Which I've experienced.
Inherently.
Yes. My number 5 game is Betrayal at House on the Hill. I know it gets a bad rap for not being like balanced once the haunt starts. But I like the story that you tell every time, that it can be a different story. I know we went through Betrayal Legacy, and that was a really fun experience. So I like the horror aspects of it, the fact that there's a lot of discovery and unknown, and then there is that point in every game where the haunt starts, where things switch over, and then it becomes a new, different game that you have to explore your way through. So it has a lot of faults. I'm not saying it's like the best game, but it's my 5 favorite games.
This is
of
the
all time.
5th best game.
It's also my favorite Legacy game we've played the whole way through.
Yes.
Do you
Yes,
prefer
mine as well.
the Legacy or the regular?
I think no matter what, you can have a story, but especially when it's a legacy version of a game that's already a story, I thought that was really cool. Some of the iterations that we played through didn't make a whole lot of sense, but they had to throw a whole bunch of thematic things in there, and in the end, we were able to like laugh at it and just appreciate the overall story. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I like how easy it is to set up too. You just like give everyone a character, and then you have your stack of tiles, and you just start playing.
How many actions you get, go ahead.
Yeah,
fun.
it's really nice. Also, I'm really excited about the. I haven't tried it yet, but
The Scooby-Doo version
The
of it?
Scooby-Doo version looks cool.
Yeah.
My number 5 is Queendomino. This game, definitely I played the most during my furlough through the pandemic. Me and my wife are probably playing it on average at least once a day. But it's a great game for 2 to 4 players. And it's great at every player count. It's one of my favorite 2-player games. It's so easy to learn. It's so fast to play. And for how simple it is, for the amount of decisions that you can make, it's just a great balance of sort of thinking to simplicity. And that's why I like it. Queendomino.
Awesome.
Well, and it's cool to get the different, when you're picking the tiles, that there is more player interaction.
Yeah.
You know, and actually it's my number 6 game out of my top games. So
You already said sure. I think that's good.
Well, my number 4 is Too Many Bones by Chip Theory Games. And normally for board games, I don't get that caught up on the component quality of a game. It's definitely not a reason why I would necessarily pick a game over another game to play. But with Too Many Bones, I can't ignore the fact that that game probably has the best components of any game I've ever played. The chips are amazing. The neoprene mats are amazing. The dice are amazing. The card quality is amazing. And that's just the components. The actual gameplay itself is equally as fun and engaging as that component quality is. The way that you improve your characters by adding dice to your dice pool, I thought was very elegant and easy to understand. And it allows you to really get a completely different play experience with each of the different characters that come in the base game. And the combat itself is tactical, but not overly complicated. So there's just a lot of great things to say about Too Many Bones. And I think, like I said, the dice RPG element that they have in that game was pretty innovative. I'm not sure of any game that really comes close to doing what Too Many Bones does. So Too Many Bones has done. So for that reason, I have Too Many Bones as my number 4 game.
And I haven't played that one yet, but is that a 1v1 head-to-head type of game? Or
No, another cooperative game. Yeah.
Another cooperative
Yeah,
game.
it's from one. You can play it by yourself, with one character, up to 4 characters in the base game. Yep.
Nice.
cool.
My number 4 game is actually a game I haven't gotten to the table a lot this past year, but it's a game that still holds a dear spot in my heart because it's one of the first games we probably played as a group, and that game is Blood Rage. The thing I like most about it is the theme. I really like anything themed Viking right now. Tons of stuff out there, but Blood Rage is awesome. I think, it brings in the mythology of, Norse culture, and you get these sea creatures that you can draft onto your team, or trolls and whatnot, and they have huge impacts on the board, and that's always really fun to be usually the one throwing them on the board and ruining everyone's day, but you gotta appreciate when someone also retaliates and throws something that destroys all your ships and ruins your plans. But at its core, Blood Rage is a area control game, which I always find pretty fun. The drafting mechanic at the beginning of each round, I think, is really cool. I think we've alluded to before when discussing this game is, you're getting all these cards in your hand. They all have, powerful effects, and you're trying to determine which ones are going to work best for you as you strategize out how you're going to get your end game points. So I think that's a really cool mechanic to this game, and that's Blood Rage.
Well, and I know for Talking Cardboard, like every time we have a marathon, that one always comes to
It
the
has
table.
to, yeah.
Always.
Unanimous, yeah.
And that actually was my number 6 game. It didn't quite make my top 5 list. So.
Just barely missed.
I thought I might have been your top 6.
Okay, my number 4 game is another Stefan Feld game. Just a little bit better than the last one. This game is Amerigo. The thing I like about Amerigo the most is that it has a cube tower action selection mechanism, and you don't see that a whole lot in many other games, but in this one it's really unique, really cool. At the beginning of every round, you drop a handful of cubes down the tower. Some of the cubes get stuck in the tower, some of the other cubes get spit out the bottom if they don't get stuck, and depending on the number of cubes that pop out the bottom and the color of cubes that popped out the bottom tells you what actions you can do based on the color and how many of that action you can take based on the highest number of cubes of a color that had popped out. Try to say that one 10 times fast. But anyway, there's just so many different things going on. I think this game especially that I know John would really like a lot because it's got some tile placement in it as well. I think all of you might enjoy it to some certain level, but you're traveling around the board with these ships and trying to colonize these islands, gather resources from these islands, but as you're building out buildings on the islands, that's where the tile placement and polyomino type, trying to get it in certain configurations to fill out that island the best, that's what gets you the most points in this game. So again, another point salad game where you're just trying to get a bunch of points in various different ways, but that action selection with the different colored cubes is just what makes it really tactical. Not a ton of strategy, but just really like, oh, this is what I have to work with for this turn. What am I going to do? And other people can follow you in that same action or do different actions, and depending on what you do, really makes the game different every time.
So I'm sensing a theme between your top 5 games. Is the options you have, the decisions you can make are random or predetermined.
Yeah, just like life, yeah.
And point salad, a lot of different ways to kind of pat yourself on the back. So
Yes, exactly.
And Stefan Feld.
yeah.
And it's going to have that name on the box. So.
My number 4 is Stockpile. That was another talking cardboard in heavy rotation, especially this last year.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we've talked about it before. We'll be talking about it again, and it's an economy game where you're trying to acquire stocks, different portfolios each round, and you're bidding against the other players. I like the different starting abilities that you can have, and especially with the expansion that we threw in there now, it gives each player opportunities to kind of have a leg up if they know how to use their power. Mm-hmm. And the powers aren't anything overpowered or complicated. They're just little things that switch it up just enough. And when we play the game, we usually don't play it just one time. It's usually at least 2 times.
It goes so fast.
Yeah, it does. And then like we see a new avenue as we're finishing up the game saying, oh, I want to try this. And then we just reset and play again. And I still haven't figured out how you win like every time, Ryan. Like I don't get it.
He doesn't sell his stock. He holds on it to the end of the
He's got
game.
diamond hands.
Everything
It
he
just-
touches turns to gold.
Just sits there quietly accumulating. So, but it's so much fun and it's brightly colored and it's at its core, it's very simple. The game is primarily based on player interaction, and the economy just kind of comes along for the ride. So Stockpile's my number 4.
So you like random special powers with blind luck. Okay, I get it. I get what
Yes.
it's all about.
Yes.
That was my number 6.
Oh, see,
It actually
pretty
was.
popular then.
No.
Was it?
All right.
My number 4 is Concordia. I think it fell 1 spot from last year. It's just a great game. I think out of most all the games I've played, this one relies on luck the least, which is fun. Every player starts with the same 6 or 7 cards that do the exact same things, and it totally depends on which order you play those cards in. And then at which point you play the card that lets you pick back up all the cards that you have already played for that round so that you can start fresh again. But basically, players are playing different factions that move around the Mediterranean Roman Empire, collecting resources and inevitably scoring points based on how many territories that they've sort of conquered, or not even conquered because other players can move into them, they just have to pay you. But also the Favor of the Gods track is a cool mechanic, and just really like the game Concordia.
All right, my number 3 is Tide of Iron from Fantasy Flight Games, and hopefully when Cory puts the image in here, it's the big coffin box version and not the,
Well, of course.
the smaller one that later came out from 1A Games. But anyway, I put Tide of Iron at my number 3 because growing up as a kid, I loved playing with, army men and, setting up my own little battles and whatnot. Well, Tide of Iron was basically army men with actually rules around it to me, and that's what really got me into that game. I remember first seeing it in the board game store when I was like maybe 10 or 11 years old and knew this is the game I wanted for Christmas because it was like around November, December time. And I was with my dad. I was like, Dad, can you get me this? This is what I want. Because I looked at the box and this big, huge box with all these, miniatures in it, World War II miniatures. And it was just a game that really appealed to me then. It still appeals to me now. Unfortunately, I don't really get to the table that much because it's a game that, not many are familiar with. And with that said, I just still have it really high in my list because it's a game that I eventually expect to get to the table with more regularity because these guys are going to play it with me, right? And and I have every expansion.
Like we have to agree on air.
You've heard it here first.
You're putting us on the spot.
We're not being held hostage.
Yeah, there's no gun.
I feel like this is one of those games too. If they brought it back and it was easier to get, more mass produced again, I think it would be a high.
I think so too, and the reason why I also like it to add a little more reasoning to it is it's a good middleweight. There's I think an entry level war games like Memoir 44, but it's a little too abstract to me. I could never understand like when you lose a unit, they're still rolling the same amount of die. Like that doesn't make sense to me. In Tide of Iron, if your squad's down to one unit, they're only rolling one die, and if they're at full strength, they're rolling 4 die.
Yep.
And then you get games like Combat Commander or Conflict of Heroes and Combat Commander, which start to get a little too complicated. So yeah, Tide of Iron I felt was kind of a nice medium weight World War II tactical game, and I agree if they brought it back and just did a little better job of marketing it to the masses, it could really
be a hot sell. Yeah.
But so that's my number 3.
All right, my number 3 game is actually a pretty new game that left a really good first impression with me, and that game is SKULK Hollow. I really like all my games, I really like the theme of this. You have 2-player game, asymmetrical sides. So you've got one player playing the Guardian, another player is playing the Fox and Heroes. And the Guardian's like this big lumbering creature that has a separate board with a bunch of weak points on its body, and the Fox and Heroes are essentially trying to kill this monster by finding ways to climb onto the body and then take out these weak points, or like the arms or tentacles that allow the Guardian to perform certain actions. And I think the way that works is really interesting. It's almost like a different version of chess, right? Where it's very mind gamey, and you're trying to figure out what's the best avenue of victory based on like what action you take out first from the Guardian, or vice versa. Like how do you complete your objective as the Guardian most efficiently and prevent the Foxen from stopping you. With this game, I should also note too that like each Guardian's completely different. They have all different abilities. They're all powerful. And they also all have their own set of objectives. So this game stays fresh from game to game, and playing as the Guardian and the Foxen is also a completely different experience. So a lot of replayability and variability. So
yeah, just missed my top 10, but this game is just fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, and my number 3 game jumped 32 places from last year. A huge jump. Still was in my top 50 last year, but now, as you can see, number 3. The reason is, since the first time I bought this game years and years ago, I just loved it, fell in love with it. I know my dad really likes it. That's like one of his favorite board games and one of the only board games he'll play with me. But more recently, we got it to the table a lot more with all you guys too, and that's the reason it has climbed so high. But this game is Stockpile. Like Jurch said, like we've all kind of, I don't know who's all mentioned it so far, but just a great stock market manipulation game with hidden information. I think the most fun thing for me is obviously the special abilities kind of give you an edge up on one particular part of the game, which is fun. But just that hidden information, knowing what type of stock will go either up or down is really fun. If you're selling a particular stock, you might tip people off to knowing that that stock is about to go down next round, or you could just sell off maybe 1 or 2 shares of that stock to make people think that, oh, he's selling everything he's got, but little do you know, I have maybe 5 or 6 other shares of that same stock hidden on my player board, for example. But just a lot of fun kind of manipulating that. Whoever has the most money at the end of the game wins. So that's always fun to try to get the most money too.
So it's just like life.
Just like life. I mean, yeah, so anyway, a lot to love about this game. Another one quick thing I wanted to mention too is that the bidding over the different stockpiles is just a ton of fun too. If you bump somebody off that player token gets pushed back to them and they have to go out and either bid higher or go to a different spot. And some of that information is hidden as well. So you might, be fighting after a pile that's not necessarily great.
I think that's one of the funnest things to see is when you have, the hidden information, what's behind a bad pile to bid on, but everybody else keeps bidding it up and
Yep, bidding it higher and higher. So anyway, that's my number 3, Stockpile.
Yeah, that actually, we just talked about it. It was my number 4. So, you love it better than me.
It was number 4 this time, right?
Yes, it was. My number 3 is KeyForge. I'm kind of like the resident KeyForge player in Talking Cardboard. Obviously, with the pandemic, it has really hit the board game industry hard all over, and especially the competitive side of KeyForge. I still try to keep myself sharp. We've got the new set Dark Tidings, which comes out in the middle of March. And we're going to see if soon after that we can have a tournament, a Talking Cardboard kind of tournament where it's going to be sealed, so you get like 2 decks. And we typically do that with each new set that comes out thereabouts. And it's always fun to explore, to learn the mechanics when we're playing in like large groups. I like the game because there's a lot of like probability involved in it. And if you can start to learn the specifics of your deck, like the avenues to success, and it's not really an engine builder so much as learning the engine that's there, and then figuring out, can I do this better than the other person? And there's a lot of interaction with the other party, and they keep talking that there's a lot of things on the horizon for this game in terms of like multiple players and not just 1v1, the future sets and things like that. So I'm hoping that KeyForge is going to come back strong and introduce some of these new elements that we can be playing it more and engaging more, and that's why it's still in my top 5.
Yeah. And I would say one of the major turnoffs for me for this game initially is now a pro for the game, but each deck is completely unique from any other deck, but they've done so well at giving variable game types to this game thing, I think, too, to where I think, it kind of tailors to the fact that if you have a bad deck, you can maybe actually do something with it now, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
I'm looking forward to trying that now.
Yeah, different themes where there's you're trading decks with your opponent, and so you want to bring a bad deck to the table that you can play. So there's no such thing as like a really bad deck. Yeah. And one of the new elements that they're bringing in is evil twin decks. So every deck is going to have a mirror copy, but the cards are like the evil twin of it, so it does like the opposite thing.
Oh.
So that's going to be like a new thing that comes to the table, where is the evil twin going to be better than the original deck, and kind of that interaction. And
cool.
I'm told in the evil twin cards, every one of the evil twins is wearing an eye patch. So that's not true. That's just
that's from a movie.
It's from soap operas. The evil twin always has a scar over their eye, so they're wearing an eye patch. Yeah, but KeyForge still my number 3.
Great. My number 3 is a pretty new game to the scene, and that is Parks. Game hit me like right between the eyes when I started playing it with my wife. We played it like 4 or 5 times over the course of just a couple of days. It's just it's a very simple game to learn. But then once you kind of start playing it, it's like very tactical. Basically, every player has 2 hikers that are trekking along this path, which changes every season. There's 4 seasons to the game. And but nobody can go on the same spot as another hiker unless you use your campfire. So it's very technical, kind of where you put your guy. Do you camp out there so nobody else can take it and move ahead? Also, I have to say the packaging to this game is some of the best I've ever seen. It's a very compact box. Everything goes back together so nicely, which is always a plus. And if you're into nature, if you like the national parks, you'll love it. It's just a great little game. 1 to 5 players. It's Parks.
So it seems like that's kind of a non-typical like theme for a game, as like U.S. national parks, as opposed to like
It's becoming more and more popular now.
So that's
just recently. Yep.
Yeah, and then that's like inviting a new type of gamer in, where it's not like Norse mythology, or where it's like Dungeons and Dragons types of things, where that may scare people away if it's so immersive in the theme. But
Well, one of our other gamer buddies introduced this to his parents, I know, for example, and they would have never really, I mean, touched a little bit of board gaming, but not really, but that theme just brought them in because they love the national parks, and each card is a different national park that has a fun fact on it, I think, too.
Well, we'll be the judge if it's fun or not, but it probably is
Or
a fact.
a fact. So that kind of adds some nice flavor to it.
Yeah, that's been a really cool like recent development in the board gaming industry is more like
Fun facts.
yeah, well, fun fact. I mean that with Wingspan
Facts.
too, that was facts, and most of those facts are fun. Learning
They
about
are
birds.
fun. Yeah.
All right, my number 2 is actually Warfighter World War II, coincidentally enough, from DVG Games. And actually, I did do a video playing through this game on our Talking Cardboard YouTube channel with one of the designers from DVG, Kevin. So definitely check that video out if this game sounds interesting to you. But essentially, Warfighter World War II is a solo or cooperative board game that uses cards and a linear board to simulate a mission during World War II, and the base game is essentially content for the Western theater of World War II. They actually did recently come out with a Kickstarter for the Pacific theater of World War II, and it's a standalone game if you're more interested in that side of World War II history. But what's really cool about the game is it's essentially 2 games in one. The first game, in my mind, is just preparing for the mission or objective that you're going to set out to complete. In doing so, you first of all have to pick out the various soldiers that you're going to comprise your squad. Some soldiers are better than others, and you only have so many points that you can use. So you have to keep that in mind because you use your points to put together the soldiers, but then also the weapons and equipment that you're going to be bringing into the mission. And what's a lot of fun is trying to determine ahead of time, do I need a bazooka? Do I not need a bazooka? Do I need a flamethrower? Do I not? Do I want grenades? Or do I want all of that? The more the merrier. But that's just
The more bazookas, the merrier.
like having grenades is a lot of fun. If you play the game, you'll figure out that pretty early on that you can destroy a lot of bad guys with one grenade throw. Anyway, but what's really cool at the end of the day when you start actually getting to the mission, you can see if your decision making at the beginning paid off. Like, did you make the right decision or not with what equipment you welded your soldiers out with? And it's very cinematic. It really feels like you're almost part of a Band of Brothers mission as you're going through your own game of Warfighter World War II. So for that reason, I put it as my number 2 game.
All right, my number 2 is a game that I think actually introduced us more hardcore into the board gaming hobby from Cory.
Okay.
It's really simple, and it's a game a lot of people have talked about, and that is Queendomino. I absolutely love Queendomino. I like tile placement. I like figuring out, the best, use of those tiles and how you put them together to maximize your points. And Queendomino keeps it simple but fun. I think there's a lot of strategy you have to put into the drafting portion of this game, where it's kind of like works in a reverse draft, where if you pick quote unquote the worst tile the previous round, you then get first chance to pick what your next tile is that you're going to be putting on your board. And I really like that mechanic, and it keeps things fresh. It keeps you thinking 2 steps ahead, not just about you might see that tile's out there for next round, but you might not be the one to get it, so you can't. You gotta think and strategize in that regard. I also like that Queendomino adds, the queen, the dragon, and the building tiles to this game, and the building tiles are basically giving you extra bonus points for the end of the game, and the queen is constantly being fought over because it provides not only extra bonus points for your territories, but also a discount on the buildings that you're buying to get onto your board. So I think that's a great mechanic, and like I said, I've always had fun with this game, played it a ton. It's easy for new people to get into the hobby. Just overall great, simple game.
Really surprised this is not your number 1.
I know it should be. I also should probably be getting royalties, because I'm pretty sure I've talked 10 people into buying this game over the last year.
Exactly.
It's just my easiest recommendation for people that don't play a ton of games but want something quick and easy to play with their family or friends.
And it's one of the games that when we bring it to the table for Talking Cardboard, we usually don't play just once.
Yeah,
Like
right.
you play
quick,
it,
yeah.
and then it's quick, and then you just redo it again. And I mean, it was my number 6 game, so it didn't quite make my top 5. But yeah, like John said, that's another one of the DNA games of Talking Cardboard with Queendomino.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. My number 2 was mentioned earlier on John's list at number 7. Spoilers if you haven't seen that other video yet, but it is.
I don't know why we're watching 2 before 7.
Exactly. Yeah, watch the other video first, then come back to this one. But my number 2 is Castles of Burgundy. Like John mentioned in the other video, Castles of Burgundy is a really simple tile placement game where you have your own player board with your own little kingdom in front of you that has different colored sections that you're trying to fill out for the most points. Again, a lot of point scoring in this game. Funny that. But I think the thing I love the most about this game, also John had mentioned, is that you can build yellow tiles to your board that give you unique end game scoring than any of your other opponents. So it really tailors to different strategies, different avenues that you can take to win the game. Also, you're just rolling 2 dice at the beginning of your turn. Every turn is just 2 dice. What do you want to do with those 2 dice? That really kind of dictates where you can go. There are workers that help you manipulate the dice too, either positive or negative. So you can manipulate the dice and kind of create your own luck to a certain extent. But just a lot of fun, different every time you play. Has a bunch of different kingdom boards that you can play with too, so that adds for variability. And I have the new edition up there as well. It's probably a little bit off camera, but that adds 10 different mini expansions to the game that adds even that much more replayability.
Nice. Well, we're going to have to bust those out then.
It's awesome. So that's my number 2.
Cool. My number 2, if I ranked as many games as the rest of these guys, it would have shot way up my list. And this was one that when we first started playing it, we didn't realize what we had on our hands. And we played it, I don't remember how many times on our 24-hour marathon. But it's the Resistance. And that is a very simple game of hidden identity and social deduction. But just how that game evolves with the people you play, with the way that you have your role, and you could be the same role every single time, but it changes the game so much that either you are part of the Resistance and trying to get missions to succeed by a simple kind of blind voting system.
I'm definitely Resistance right now.
Or you could be a traitor, and your job is to scuttle the missions. But you got to make sure that you're judicious about how you do that so you don't get found out. And just... the game is pure social deduction and human interaction. And it is so fun to see how things work real basically and then try to test the waters. I remember there was one time when we were playing and a couple of us just thought of, well, what happens if we fail the first mission right away? So then some people tried that and it just changed the game just so much.
Yeah.
Little bits like that. And you always get in my head that most times you're kind of toying with me. I still maintain that I think in all the talking cardboard times we've played, I think I've only lost 1 time, which is, either a really good thing or a really bad thing, that I'm so good at social manipulation and deduction. But just it's fun to see everybody come up with their own way that they put together the facts, that everybody has their own interpretation of how simple the structure of the game is, and the game is played in the margins, where it's having conversations and figuring out and then trying to manipulate or be manipulated or let somebody think you are, just so many levels. And it's really fun, and you can't play it just one time. You have to play through it many times.
For sure.
Yeah.
Some people play the same way every time, and that throws people off, and some people can play completely different.
And some people have very untrustworthy personalities, and you can just always throw them under the bus. So
and some people have 2 ways that they play, and you can tell instantly which way they're playing.
Okay, for the record, he always picks on me for this, but I think I've only ever lost once in this game too.
No, you've lost plenty of times.
My number 2 is Pandemic Legacy Season 1. It's a great game that's kind of hard to talk about because everyone's so worried about spoilers, especially being that we're in the middle of a campaign now.
Not we as in humanity.
Yeah.
Talking cardboard.
Coronavirus?
We're in the middle of a LARP right now. But just like Resistance, the memories that you make playing this game are outstanding. It starts out with a very basic game of essentially the regular Pandemic. And then you play the game over a series of 12 game months. And so if you lose once, you play it again for that month. And if you lose again, you automatically move on. But anytime you win, you move on to the next month. And the game rules change. The viruses might mutate a little bit between each one. So every time you play, it becomes more fresh. And the story that the game follows, it's loose, but it's incredible. The experience is incredible. Destroying components, like at first is like, oh, do I really want to do this? But then once you start, that's also incredible.
I've never gotten used to that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that
The main
sounds
complaint
bad.
of it is replayability, but the game is so good that it's like, who cares? The experience is awesome.
Well, and if you think about it, when you're playing a legacy game, like for Pandemic Legacy Season 1, you play it 12 times.
At
At least 12 times.
Up to
So-
24 times.
So when you think about it, how many games over the course of, in real life do you play at least 12 times?
Yeah,
Unless you're
I don't
think
think
I've played any game.
See? So the replayability,
Yeah, it's...
once you go through it, then that has served
And do
its
you really,
purpose.
do you really want to play? I mean, yeah, I guess we've played Stockpile and Queendomino and Resistance a ton of times. But a game like Pandemic, or Pandemic even in general, like, you keep it fresh every time, and then the story ends, and like you win or you lose, but it's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, my number 1 is Twilight Imperium 4th Edition, and to try to summarize this whole game up in a couple minutes is pretty much impossible. Yeah. So hopefully you've heard of that game. If not, it's the classic 4X game out there, and there's a lot of reasons why I find it appealing. I think the number 1 is that it's a game that somehow kept me engaged for like 20 hours. And to say, and with that said, a lot of people probably this isn't going to be a game for everyone, but for me, the fact that it was able to succeed in doing that made me put this at my number 1 spot, because I don't think many games can keep your attention for that long of time.
Leave in the comments below at how terrible Nick is at playing this game for 20 hours. It should have been like 6 hours. So.
Our play group was definitely took a little too much time on the negotiation aspect of the game, but that's obviously a critical aspect of this game is the petty negotiation. Like, oh wait, you're gonna give him that one trade, why not me? And then you spend 10 minutes talking about one piece of
Start
trade.
the sand time.
Yeah,
Do that.
that's how we probably should be playing in the future. But combat's really cool in the game. You have cool, unique flagships for each faction. And sometimes each faction has slightly different rules for some of their combat units. Each race in general has their own nuances that make them different and more suited to take one approach to trying to win the game. But at the end of the day, what's also really fun is it's first to 10 objectives or 10 victory points, and the objectives come out as you play the game. So you don't even know how you can win the game at the start of the game, because you only have 2 objectives shown to you, and you have to wait till like the 5th or 6th round until you have enough objectives even visible to understand how you can actually achieve victory in the game. And you never feel like one player's behind too far or one player's too far ahead, because everyone's trying to keep everyone else in balance. Of course, people are trying to make alliances with each other. There's just so much going on. A lot of juicy mechanisms in the game. Influence, trade, commerce. So, yeah, like I said, you could spend an hour talking about this game easy, but I'll stop there and say Twilight Imperium 4th Edition is my number 1 game.
Because the 3rd edition is crap.
Yeah, well,
Right.
I'm waiting for it. With that said, they did just come out with an expansion for the 4th edition that makes it sound even better than it already was. So, yeah.
Still have to try this game.
Yeah,
Yep.
we can do it for our 24-hour marathon, and that's the only game.
That was the only game we played.
All right, my number 1's actually another new game that I just played probably within the last couple of months, but again, it really had a large impact on me, and it blends a lot of game mechanics I like, from deck building to area control to worker placement mechanics, all in one. And that game is DUNE Imperium. I should also note, now that I'm starting to read the DUNE book, and I'm like 3/4 of the way through that, it's all starting to make more sense, and the theme is really strong.
Yeah.
Like, at first I was like, alright, I don't know who all these guilds on the board are, but whatever. It's still, like, the guilds themselves and how you interact with them and gain allegiance with them is, I think, a really cool, like, side option you're trying to manage, because you are gaining victory points through gaining allegiance with these guilds. And the Bene Gesserits, I can never say it right, have these intrigue cards, which I think previously we've talked about. They're kind of really random and powerful to some extent, or some aren't as powerful, but they add a nice twist to the game where you never know when someone's going to flip one up and already all of a sudden like destroy your plans that you're building up for like a turn. So I think that's a cool aspect to the game. I like how the area control is handled with that if you're involved in the war on the planet, you are basically vying for the first, second, or third place. And no matter where you end up, you get some kind of benefit. But obviously, you can kind of gauge where you want to end up that turn to get, min-max your reward, and maybe save up for a better reward on a future turn. So,
now, question: Do you think that reading the book now is giving you a leg up in terms of playing the game?
absolutely not. But it'll at least make the different characters and their powers maybe make a little more sense.
I would argue that it almost gives you a leg down, because I definitely spent the first couple turns that I played being like, ooh, I want to go get, I want to work my Bene Gesserit faction.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, you sort of do things because you think it's cool knowing the characters in the book, and then you realize, like, oh, I should actually start playing this game.
But it does make the resources you're going for make sense, like spice and why that's important and why you're spending it to get a bunch of troops, or like water's very rare on this planet and getting one water might seem insignificant, but it's super powerful and important for future actions and turns.
So then I'll just spark notes it, and then I'll be fine to play the game.
Oh yeah, that'd probably be
Okay,
fine.
cool.
Yeah, like everything in life. Just
Or
spark
watch the
notes.
upcoming
Yeah,
movie.
we're watching
Yeah.
a review. We did that, I think. So there you go.
Yeah, that's true.
All the secrets are laid bare.
Interesting. And I don't have to read a book.
Fantastic game, though. I really like it.
Yeah.
And, one that we've talked about before, too, where it's better probably with 3 to 4 players.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of conflict.
And I should note, this still hit my number one, and the main thing it is missing is tile placement. My favorite mechanic.
That's an
But it
important note.
blends
Wow.
all the other ones so well that
Yeah.
I just think it's great.
Well, my number one is a hand management game that adds some, not really worker placement, but worker traveling or worker progression. And this game is Great Western Trail. It's been my number one game all these years. It's never been dethroned at all. And I just love this game so much. Basically, in this game, like I said, you are traveling around on this path to land on different options and to give you different actions that you can do. All in the meanwhile, you're trying to manage a hand of cows, a hand of cattle, that you are then sending off when you get to Kansas City at the end of the board. You are sending them off to different cities to basically, get your points, money, essentially. But the way you're doing this is just so much fun. There's so many different paths to victory, kind of like in a lot of my other games that
You say
I
it's
enjoy.
a point salad.
I wouldn't say it's as much.
I don't think this one's a point
not
salad.
as much point salad. It's not like you can just get points for everything you're doing. You're kind of taking one or two strategies and really trying to exploit that the best you can. But with those 3 different main strategies, one is not necessarily better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the engineer strategy where you're trying to get your train further along because you get more points for sending your cattle to further cities. You have another strategy where you can either build better buildings just for yourself that give you specific actions that are a lot more powerful than other actions. Or the other simple thing is just the cowboys. The better and better you get with being a cowboy, the better cattle you get for selling them at the end of the track. Another really cool thing I just want to throw in there real quick too is that it's fun trying to cull cards from your hand to get different cards and kind of manipulate that, because you only get money for the different cattle you have at the end of the track. So you're not really trying to collect all the same thing. You're really trying to manipulate that the best you can. So my number one this year, number one in all years, and maybe it'll be dethroned next year. I don't know, but that is Great Western Trail.
It probably won't be.
Probably won't be.
But that's okay.
You never know.
Because my number one has been consistent, and it won't, I don't think, be dethroned either. That is the old Wizards of the Coast MLB Showdown. So it is, it ran from 2000 to 2005. It is based on Major League Baseball rosters, and you buy individual player cards, so you construct your roster based on meeting all the fielding requirements to have an actual baseball team. And then you are rolling a 20-sided die to determine kind of the outcomes of each pitcher-batter interaction. I really liked it because, it was when I was growing up, so I've got that nostalgia feel. I played it with my brothers relentlessly. We would spend entire summers going through full leagues of all the Major League Baseball teams and kept stats for a few of those years. And our cards are, for the most part, really beat up now, but it was a lot of probability and statistics, and it was baseball, and it was approachable. But then, like the theme with a lot of my games is the stories are things that could happen within it. Within the course of one game, it's a baseball game. But my brothers and I especially really when we kept track of stats, when we had teams and rankings and stuff like that, that was really what was fun for us. In the last few years, the Showdown community has kind of come back a little bit, and there are a few independent publishers that have published or tried to similar versions of this now that they've tried to re-energize. They don't have the funds for like the licensing, but they're able to have their games versions of that. And I think in the last 6 months, somebody came up with a website that was kind of a algorithm or equation where it generates any baseball player's card for any season based on their real stats.
That's awesome.
So that it's able to be normalized to like the results that would happen are what actually kind of happened in the real baseball season that year. And I love roster construction and trying to like maximize my points and strategies and stuff like that. And I know every time I get to my top game each year and I say, hey, this year I might try to dust off our cards and play a little bit. So we can insert that clip here from each of the last whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, it's my favorite game because of all the history and experience I had with it, and it checked a lot of those boxes at the time. So I mean, I'll see if I can dig through my collection or if I can somehow procure the resources to get an updated versions of the cards where then, you know, could play again.
Yeah, just do like a light, fun tournament with everybody. I think this game would really shine as a tournament format.
Yep, it's a low threshold of entry. I definitely would go much deep in strategy than what mere mortals would.
Leave it up to a 20-sided die roll.
Kind of.
Well, you can manipulate that to a certain extent, right?
Yep. Yeah, but that's why that is my top game of all time, MLB Showdown.
My number one game is Gloomhaven. I wanted to flip-flop from last year, but Gloomhaven is a great sort of, well, it's not really open world because it's a board game, but it's kind of half dungeon crawler, half traveling around this make-believe world with your various character, getting gold, getting new equipment, getting experience and leveling up. But you and up to 3 of your friends can play your little mousy guy or your big rock guy, and eventually if you want to change characters, you can sort of retire your old character and start fresh with a new one throughout the story. But it's a huge box game. The miniatures are great. The hand management and the way you can play your cards is better than any other hand management game I've ever played. It's absolutely outstanding. And just the sheer amount of time you can spend playing this game is also incredible. I mean, the base game alone is like clocked at 200 plus hours, and then there's 1 or 2 expansions to it that add another tens of hours if you want. And then there's the new Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion that came out recently, which I think we hopefully will start playing soon, but that's sort of the introduction to Gloomhaven Light, if you will. And then a couple years down the road, there'll be a new Gloomhaven that's being kickstarted or has already been kickstarted. Frosthaven.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as you're able to finish the game, they've already come out with a new iteration.
Yeah, right. If you kickstarted it, you'll probably get it in like 2023, 2024. But the game, it's just incredible. I mean, high barrier of entry, both with cost and sort of complexity or intimidation to a new player. But if you can get it to the table, it's incredible.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up in like a serious question, is the intimidation factor of this game, and the reason why I haven't gotten it played or bought it yet. Does it feel like to you that this is more of a lifestyle game where you have to, well, obviously it's not for you because you play other games too, but do you feel like people want to get more enveloped in the story and really just play this game over and over again to be really involved with this game? Or is this one where you can just kind of jump in and have fun, just like a one-off session?
You can definitely jump in and have fun, but it's definitely a much more rich experience if you are playing with the same group of players over the course of the story, because there is a legacy aspect to it inherently. As you're leveling up your character, you're adding newer and better cards to your deck, and which just gives you more options and better options to play as you're fighting through these dungeons. There's also random encounters that you have as you travel around to these different spots. The quest aspect to the game is really cool. The map that you get is really cool as you uncover it and place stickers on this other board to sort of show where your travels have gone in the past. Everything about it is just a great example of what the game tries to do.
It just sounds like a more structured RPG style game that if people love RPGs but want a little bit more structure, I think they just love it.
Yeah, if you're into Dungeons & Dragons or any other roll and write RPG, I don't know why you wouldn't love this game.
All right, well, that does it for this time. This year's top 10, or I guess top 5 on this segment. Favorite board games of all time. As always, if you like the content you see here on the channel, consider subscribing. We'd really appreciate it. Leave comments below. We'd love to hear what your top 10, or I guess on this segment, I keep saying it, top 5 favorite board games of all time, and we can kind of dispute that back and forth. Well, until next time, you all have a great day.